So what we learned is that people in difficult environments have a hard time understanding Bitcoin, and they want to take it into their own hands. They want financial independence, and they want to take it into their own hands and be sovereign. So education is a catalyst for change. So you'll find out in our next panel about how Bitcoin education initiatives can onboard the next million people and diversify the educational initiatives all around the world. So you'll hear from our next panel, starting with Roya Mahboob, the founder and CEO of the Digital Citizen Fund. Carol Souza, co-founder of Area Bitcoin. Femi Lange, program director of B-Trust Builders. And NiftyNei, co-founder of Base 58 and Conference Series B++. Let's give them a round of applause.
Hey everyone, really glad we could join you today. I'm Nifty, and we're here to talk today about onboarding people via education to Bitcoin. First off, we'd like to start by kind of introducing ourselves, giving you kind of an overview about what our project's about and the sort of education that we're all focused on individually. Carol, do you want to go ahead and start?
Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Carol from Area Bitcoin. It's a Bitcoin school that started in Brazil, and now we're creating content in other languages as well. And we see Bitcoin as a mindset, that it's totally the opposite of fiat mindset. The money we use lead us to a fiat mindset of high time preference, and we don't even notice that we are sitting on ice cubes. That is the fiat money. So when you start to realize that you are being debased all the time, and it's a kind of stealing your time and your effort working, you start to shift your mindset. And this is our process and our objective in Area Bitcoin, to help people to change the mindset from the fiat mindset to the Bitcoin mindset. We are on a lot of social medias, we have articles, we have our own platform, we have workshops, courses to help people in all kinds of formats they want to consume education, and to help Brazilians and anyone who wants to learn about Bitcoin. So this is our effort right now. And we are totally open for anyone who wants to suggest things or help us improve our content.
Hello everyone. My name is Femi. I'm from Nigeria. I am program director for a program called B-Trust Builders. And you're going to hear more about B-Trust in the next panel. We are a foundation that's looking to decentralize the development of Bitcoin. Bitcoin being built on open source technology, unfortunately, the vast majority of the contributors are from the West. But if this is global, then surely people from the rest of the world should be part of that conversation. The work I do, I look for software developers across Africa. I introduce them to Bitcoin development as a concept first, but then take them through a deep process to actually learn how to become Bitcoin developers, and then get them ramped into open source Bitcoin development. I do the work because every previous wave of technology we've had, unfortunately, we in Africa have always ended up being consumers rather than builders. So if you think about the automobile, when it came to Africa, came to Asia about the same time, the Asians took it apart, put it together and built Toyota and Hyundai and Honda and Suzuki. And in Africa, the African leaders tried to buy the best one as it came out of the shelf. And it's probably going to be the same thing in Bitcoin if we don't get involved. Today, I'm from Nigeria, one of the top Bitcoin countries. Problem though is majority of people playing in that space are in the P2P trading space. I work with developers across Africa to make sure we can come into this as producers, as builders of the technology, not just consumers of it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I'm Roya Mahboob, and I'm CEO and co-founder of Digital Citizen Fund, which is a non-profit organization based in the US, which we try providing equal access to education and opportunity for women in developing countries like Afghanistan. How I get involved with Bitcoin, it's back 2013, when we built on a platform that allowed women to create the content, and we paid based on the content that they created. But after a while, we noticed that many of our bloggers and programmers across Afghanistan, which they increased, they don't have a bank account. And it was very difficult for us to giving money to sending it by cash or through Hawala system, or deposit the money in the bank account of the men, which usually meant take the money, and we couldn't do anything about that. So we trying to figure out that how we send the money to them. Because 85% of the population of Afghanistan at the time, they didn't believe in the banking system. And they use usually the very like Asian ways of Hawala for sending money across the country. And then we heard about PayPal. PayPal didn't work out. And then we heard about mobile money, which was a very successful project in Kenya, but it didn't work very well in Afghanistan. And then we heard about Bitcoin. And after a little bit of research about Bitcoin, we decided to building a payment system based on Bitcoin at a time. And we deployed Bitcoin, and with click of a button or push of a button, we could send the money in the wallet of the woman that they could receive it. And Bitcoin helped us to bypass the physical and social barriers to paying a woman in developing countries. We are talking about 1.7 billion of the people who don't have a bank account, which 56% of them are women, the majority of them actually. And in Afghanistan also the majority of 80% are the women. So that was an issue at the time. And then when I started Digital Citizen Fund, our aim was to providing education and financial literacy and also digital literacy, because we aim to provide more education for more women, and especially because they are the minority. They are not minority, but they have less access to education. So that was our focus during those years. And move forward, we have seen that there are lots of the markets of the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency open up in Afghanistan, which interestingly that Hawala people, they, especially the younger Hawala, which we call it Sarafi, they started using cryptocurrency. When Afghanistan in 2021, the Republic government collapsed and Taliban took over overnight the country. So obviously the banking system has collapsed, and it was very difficult to send money to Afghanistan at the time. And you know, 1/3 of the population suffer from food insecurity, and there was 2/3 of the population that they had not stable they didn't have stable housing, and people didn't know how to the organization, and people had difficulty to send the money to Afghanistan at the time. Mobile money and the Western Union were out of the cash, and the only things at the time was remain safe. It was Bitcoin and stable coins that remaining safe, and they becoming as a financial lifetime for those who knows how to use the Bitcoin. So many of the people at the time, they used cryptocurrencies, including our organization, to send money for aid purpose, for food, for renting houses, and also for saving houses for the women activists at the time, also paying for evacuation at the time. So for us, Bitcoin became as a hope, as a beacon of hope, and a safeguard of the human rights, and that's the reason that we are focusing to provide more access to education for people to know about that, and they can get their financial freedom.
Great, and then I'll just kind of briefly go over what I'm doing at Base 58. We are we're an engineering school, I like to say, built on a Bitcoin standard. We're really focused on teaching engineers and developers about how Bitcoin as a protocol works. We started in, I think, 2021, doing in-person and online classes. Now we're pretty focused on trying to get a lot more content out available as kind of self-serve online classes, so that developers and engineers and just curious people all over the world have really good resources so they can learn more about how Bitcoin works from a technical perspective. One thing that I think is really great about this panel is it really highlights some of the international efforts, like how global Bitcoin is as an education project. I think all of us as projects and organizations are really focused on bringing in new people in different places and the different situations that we all find each other. I think one thing that would be pretty interesting from each of us to hear is kind of, when someone's coming to one of our programs to learn more about Bitcoin, what kind of classes or experiences can they expect to get whenever they come through? What have you learned maybe through running classes or putting out education and curriculum in terms of what works, what's challenging, what did you try that didn't work, what are you trying now? So Carol, maybe you can talk about what's going on at Area Bitcoin in that regard.
Yeah, in Brazil right now we have a lot of challenges, especially in Brazil we already had hyperinflation. We already had banking accounts being confiscated by the president in the 90s. This is should be a big trauma, but sometimes people forget and still trust in the fiat system, right? And even now, our currency has 30 years age and already lost 87% of purchase power. So right now, our biggest challenge, there are three biggest challenges. One is help people to see inflation as a silent stealing their time and their purchasing power, and most people don't know how to solve it, how to have a better life, or how to save better, and Bitcoin is a great tool for it. So our biggest challenge is keep the learning process, because everybody knows that new Bitcoin 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 year ago, and forgot about it. So we need a lot of exposing to Bitcoin, exposing to Bitcoin content for people to become aware of the fiat problems, right? So our biggest challenge with our students and those who watch our jobs and see our content is to keep the process and keep them learning about fiat system, how it works, and how Bitcoin is a tool in many processes, how privacy, how security, how to protect purchase power, and this is one challenge. The other one is crypto space is way popular, so we need to separate Bitcoin from the rest, especially in Brazil. It's really speculative, inflationary systems. Oftenly, people are more speculative behavior. And our biggest challenge is to differentiate, because other companies and platforms have all the interest to mix everything together. It was the same, but it's not. And the third biggest challenge is CBDC. Brazil, it's a country that has a lot of development across CBDC. We already have payment rails called Pix that evolved really fast. Most Brazilians use it. In some kind of way, people now understand better QR codes and digital payments, but has a lot of confusion with Bitcoin, and they are launching now the central bank CBDC called Drex. And they are advertising Drex as better than Bitcoin. They have smart contracts, and they have DeFi. So our central bank is using shitcoin narrative to promote their fiat products. So our biggest challenge is to differentiate and help people to see all of this context and how Bitcoin is different from all of this, and how they can use and be empowered and feel free, and to exchange peer-to-peer, and how also circular economies are important in Brazil, but we can discuss this later. But these are the three biggest challenges. And our efforts is help people to see it, because after you see it, that's the first step for you to shift from the fiat mindset to a Bitcoin mindset, and keep evolving your knowledge and keep connected to Bitcoin. So this is.
So for us, because our target audience are a very technical crowd, pipeline is our biggest challenge. While I like the fact that in Bitcoin we say Bitcoin has no CEO, Bitcoin has no marketing department. Unfortunately, nature abhors a vacuum. If you don't fill a space, somebody else will fill it. And so in the absence of Bitcoin coming to Africa to educate African developers about Bitcoin as technology, shitcoiners did. Solana did, Ethereum did, Cardano did. And so within the developer ecosystem in Africa, majority of them actually have no clue there's something called Bitcoin development. Like you mentioned it to them for the first time, they're going, oh, I do Solidity. I'm like, no, it's not one of those. So the first is even just getting them to realize that there's something called Bitcoin technology. The second thing is there's lots of Bitcoin trauma that we're having to educate people out of. The truth is, stack sats and hodl is not the value proposition for my part of the world, sadly. Particularly for people who have short-term financial needs that they need to get money from. But people have gone to them in the past and told them, just buy this thing, the price is going to the moon, like this. But it happened that they bought at the top, and then the price dropped, and he had to pay for school fees for his kids. And now he has to liquidate his Bitcoin at the bottom. And so anytime he sees anything or hears anything Bitcoin, he doesn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So going back and letting them understand that this thing is more than just this investment asset, that's actually a currency and a tool for freedom and all the other things that we say. It's not the messaging of Bitcoin for majority of people. And so we have to work to correct some of those errors and the past bad information that they've gotten. I think the third challenge, or another challenge that I find a lot, and I also see it as an opportunity. My personal perspective is that what scales Bitcoin is utility. What scales Bitcoin as currency is when people can, every touch point in their day where they need to touch money, they can find Bitcoin, an option to use Bitcoin, to spend Bitcoin or to earn Bitcoin. And unfortunately, that doesn't exist at the moment. So it's the opportunity that I then use to engage and get the developers in, because I tell them, if someone is going to build these solutions for our environment, it will have to be someone that understands the technology, but also understands our environment. And so where developers are looking for, when a developer is trying to make the decision on, should I learn a new language or should I make a choice of becoming a Bitcoin developer, one of the things they're looking at is what's the career prospect. Unfortunately, this is another problem. Unfortunately, jobs in Bitcoin, one, it's hard to get jobs in Bitcoin for developers from my part of the world, sadly. And when they get those jobs are too fickle. Bitcoin companies hire when the market is up, and once it's down, they start letting people go, which isn't quite good for someone who wants to build a long-term career. And so part of the work we're doing is, one, through the work with BitTrust, is helping them actually build a ramp to a career in open source, so that becomes a pathway that they variably can look at, and do it in a way that is economically fulfilling as well as personally fulfilling. But also helping them understand that while they are learning about the technology now, our expectation is that in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, they will be the CTOs and CEOs of new application companies that solve problems for Africans powered by Bitcoin technology, because they've gotten the skills to do that and they understand the environment where those problems exist. So how we do it in terms of our training is all virtual. It's in cohorts, so we actually have a cohort that's ongoing right now. It's 3 months, it's intense. It's structured like a boot camp. In January, we started with 55 developers. At the end of the first month, we've cut 30, so we now have 25 developers in the program. At the end of each month, we're paying them a stipend to be in the program. They're doing it part-time, so that they keep their day job, but we tell them to cut off every other side gig that they do, and we pay them a stipend as a replacement for those side gigs that they have to do. In this month, starting actually the week that we just concluded, was the second month, we started Introduction to Open Source, Introduction to Etiquettes of Contributing to Open Source. They're starting to pick first issues on a range of open source projects that they can contribute to. In the next few weeks, we're bringing maintainers of open source projects to come speak to and interact with the group so that you can actually let them understand the purpose behind the project and humanize the project. So Selfish ask if you are a maintainer of an open source project in the room and you're looking for contributors, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Please meet me before the conference ends. And the goal is that by the time they're done at the end of the 3 months of the program, the best of them, we put them on what we have in Bitrust called the starter grant, which is a small grant that gets them digging deeper and working deeper in open source to find the areas where they can make a contribution before a longer-term grant. And again, you'll hear more about the grant process in the next phase. Thank you.
We needed to see that how we can have a collaboration in Afghanistan for this program. Well, I mean, there are many challenges in our work. So obviously, our colleagues also mentioned about that. One is awareness and education, and because many of the people, especially in my area, they don't understand how Bitcoin is work or underlying technology that Bitcoin is used. And many of them, they are not coming from a background of technology or finance. So that is also very difficult to explain for them. And then another challenge that we notice is about security and best practice that how they can protect their Bitcoin holding is another issue that, if you're working with older generation or even the younger generation, they often forgot the password, and it's also created other issues that they will, if they lose that, they will gonna lose their Bitcoin. Another issues is also around the law and legality around the Bitcoin that is vary from one country to another country. And then obviously not having a user-friendly application that it will be in the local language, so be easier for the people who don't speak English. And obviously another things that already they mentioned is the content that mostly are in English, and we needed localizing the content. And the most important thing is the misconception about using of the cryptocurrencies, because people will look at the TV, and the majority of people get their news and their facts from the TV and local TVs that they're watching. And usually in the TV, wherever the Bitcoin price goes down, they talk about that, or if there is some criminal in using the Bitcoin, they talk it and bold it a lot about that. And that is also happening. I remember when in 2013 when we used Bitcoin, obviously at that time was very a few people working at cryptocurrencies for the real use case. People, especially in the IT industry, called us scam and fraud, and we had to not only fighting back with extremists and with the local Talibans and the conservative community, but also with the people inside of the IT industries, because many of them were skeptical in Bitcoin, and they encouraging people to not use it. And then I was realized that it's because mostly they get the information from the media. And the media is pattern that the cryptocurrencies as something is only used by either criminal activities, or it's a fraud, or you want to lose your money. And to fighting back, we thought that the best thing is to educate people. And that was the reason that when we started Digital Sum Fund, we started to put in our financial literacy how to manage the money from level of home to level of entrepreneurship. But in the between, when we're teaching about the money, we put cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin in the financial literacy that they can learn about. Beside of the other currency, they learn about digital currencies like Bitcoin as well. So I think that these are all the main challenges that it's make it difficult to make it millions of the people to use the Bitcoin. Another thing that has happened in 2021 when as I mentioned, that there are many of this crypto market in Kabul, Mazar, that people use it even after Taliban took over the country. So that Taliban right now is banned those markets. One of the issues that is rise is because of the people who are not familiar how to use the crypto like Bitcoin or stable coins. They heard about Shibacoin and they want to be rich fast. And those countries usually they don't have access to the stock market. So they're hearing about cryptocurrencies market and how they want to be rich fast, and they're hearing about the prices goes on up and down, and they want to giving their monies to people who do trading. And that was just happening, and they lost a lot of the money at the time because some people scammed them, and especially through the exchanges that they claim that they make them rich, and that was also a reason that make the Taliban to be pay attention on the crypto market. Another reason was also is that people, I mean, the previous people who worked for the Afghan governments, when they left the country, they had to leave with only backpack, and they couldn't get their monies because the next day their bank all get freeze by Taliban, and they could not take their cash, they couldn't take their jewelries. If some people who took their jewelries, but they couldn't take their lands and home or factory, and they all get seized by Taliban, and so people started to selling whatever they had it and exchange it to Bitcoin and send it the money outside. And that was also a reason that the Taliban pay attention on the crypto market, and they shut down the market. They make it illegal to using cryptocurrencies. And they mentioned the argument is that people are not enough educated about the Bitcoin, and they are not educated about cryptocurrency. And they're gonna, and that was a reason that they shut down it, but also they said that they don't know how to control or regulate this market. So I think that these are the challenges that we are facing with that, and there are solutions for it, but obviously it's needed a multi-factored approach to for the created awareness about cryptocurrencies.
Cool. It sounds like we've got a lot of challenges that are sort of in common between all of our projects. It's really interesting to hear you guys talk about, some of the misconceptions is like a large part of what you're dealing with when you're educating people, is really kind of overcoming kind of maybe what the general narrative is of Bitcoin outside of your ecosystem or outside of your project. So when people arrive, the first thing is you have to kind of maybe correct what they've learned somewhere else, is like sort of the first project that you get. On the more technical side of education, I don't run into like the misconceptions of Bitcoin as much. I think the things that we see more is the first one is like if you're an engineer, a lot of people have maybe a misconception that they're like, why would I need to know how the protocol works? Is this going to help me build this project? Is this going to help me contribute to this particular software project that I want to help out with? Is this going to help me find a job? Like if I know how Bitcoin works, like if I know what a UTXO is, if I know how to write a Bitcoin transaction, how is that actually useful for anything in my real life, whatever that is? I can use all these tools to do all that already. Why do I need to learn it? I'm one of those people who just finds that sort of thing interesting, so I never really have a good answer. But I think the thing I've kind of come around to is the reason that you want to know how Bitcoin works is because it's empowering. I don't think that's just from a technical side. I think that cuts across education at any level, whether it's in the technical or just how to use the tools, or that it's available and what it's trying to do from a monetary perspective. But the ability to like really understand how something works, and it's not just understanding how it works. I think it's also when you learn something, that gives you a new feeling of empowerment, right? So when you learn how to use a new tool, or when you learn how to make a Bitcoin transaction, maybe using a wallet, or maybe you learn how to explain the difference between proof of work and proof of stake, all of a sudden there's like a new conversation that you can have with other people about a topic. It also gives you access to other conversations that smart people are having that maybe you weren't able to participate in before. So yeah, like learning about, why learn Bitcoin at a technical level, why learn about how, the bytes are put together. Is that going to make you a better like software developer? I think so. I think it kind of makes you like a super powered person who can look out across the ecosystem. And because you know what kind of work all of these different software applications are trying to accomplish, all of a sudden that gives you a new perspective of how you can contribute, what's needed, maybe where new opportunities are. So like really good education, both on the technical level or elsewhere. I like to see it as kind of an engine for inspiration of really getting people to spend more time in the project and become more active participants in Bitcoin, at whatever level of education they're doing. One of the other things that I think is really interesting doing technical education as a challenge, particularly is I think people kind of, like whenever they find out that they're doing, it's a technical thing, I think a lot of people almost like self-select themselves out of learning about technical things because they have this like misconception, maybe we can say, that technical things are outside of their capacity to be able to participate or to learn. And Bitcoin, I think when you get down to it, one of the big challenges as a project is that it is like a technical project to a large extent. So some of what you're kind of getting through with new people is you kind of have to help them convince themselves that it's not outside of their reach. Some of the ways that we do that at Base 58 are in-person exercises. So I run a project called the Base 58 World Famous Bitcoin LARP. A LARP, if you haven't heard of that word before, is an acronym that stands for Live Action Role Play. The idea with this game, it's like an in-person game. It requires a crowd. It's competitive. It's kind of a team-building activity, so you get to have friends. It's very technical, but I don't tell you that when you walk in. It just looks like you're maybe playing with arts and crafts. You've got some papers and some colored stickers. But we go through over the 2-hour exercise in a very hands-on, tactile, like there's no computers or anything. You're just like sending paper around. You're talking to friends. You're using pens to write things down. You're competing. But at the end of it, you've kind of had your hands on and you've touched every aspect of how the Bitcoin protocol works, from writing transactions, validating transactions, sending transactions to new nodes, building new blocks, verifying blocks, mining for new blocks. So it's really cool how one of the things that I've seen with this is that people will go through this exercise wherever level they're at in their understanding of Bitcoin. And then, they'll learn something. Most people have a really good time doing it, which is important. They're usually successful at accomplishing some of the tasks in the exercise. Maybe by the end they get lost, but they were able to like have some wins and gain some confidence in their ability to do stuff in person as they're doing it, which is really great to see. And then the really cool, fun thing that I love that tends to happen after people go through the LARP or Base 58 classes is I'll get messages from them later. They're like, I went back home and I went to a technical meetup, or I wanted to present to my local Bitcoin group about the things that I learned through going through one of your classes or one of your education projects. And they'll be either surprised at how much more they understand on the technical stuff. They weren't a technical person, they did this game. Now they're like, wait, I can understand this. Like all of a sudden, I'm operating at a level where these conversations about what's happening in Bitcoin are all of a sudden accessible to me, which is so cool. Or the other one is, I think one of my favorite stories about a Base 58 student is they went home and they made a presentation about what they had learned about how Bitcoin works for one of their local community groups that had like weekly meetings. They were doing a presentation that week. And they put their slide deck together and sent it to the organizer, and the organizer was like, whoa, this is like too technical. Like this guy went from being like, not really a technical person, he learned all this stuff and he was really excited to share it, and then he goes and he's like crossed over to the other side, if that makes sense. Like he kind of like went across the other side. So I think that's one of the bigger challenges with technical education, and maybe just education with Bitcoin in general, is convincing people that it's something that they're capable of learning. Which is, again, really cool to see people when they are able to move past that, kind of get to the other side, and really just gain confidence that whatever it is that's out there, they're able to learn and participate and maybe contribute back to, which is really cool. So one of the topics, kind of the topic about this panel that we're talking about is how we're getting kind of the next, was it million or billion new people into Bitcoin? Maybe we should go through and talk a little bit about like our scaling plans. You know, this is where we are as an organization. This is how we're looking into bringing on and scaling like the particular type of education that you as your organization are bringing to people. Roya, do you want to start this time?
Sure. I mean, one of the ways that I think that we could provide it is easy to understanding education material, which is a guideline that they can learn from A to Z, and especially for the basic things that they learn about Bitcoin, especially for our case. And as well, it could be infographic with interactive materials that they can learn about how to just simply use Bitcoin and how they have to download the wallets, they can like saving the money or send the money. And we don't teach the very high level of the Bitcoin training like you guys, but we are basic things because we wanted that our consumer is the general people, and we wanted that everybody have just be aware about how to using the cryptocurrencies. Another thing that I think that is very important is that grassroots activists are going to play an important role to providing this type of the training in their communities. That's why it's very important that they have access to this type of material to translate it in their local language, and they can give it access to the people in their communities. Another thing that I think that is very important is that grassroots activists or the people who are provided training, they have to also have a forum or community, building a community of the people who are interested in Bitcoin. So they have a place not only just learning, but they can share experience and they can talk about the topics. And as well, if there is anything related to the Bitcoin fraud or a scam in your community, they can expose it through their online forum or the chat or when they are seeing each other's. Another ways, I also think that grassroots activists, it's important that they have to talking or get partnership with the local media for the changing the misconception that people have about the Bitcoin and the local media. I think that the media is actually an important role they play to shift the minds of the people, and it's so important that we can provide this type of education through the media to the people and make the awareness about if there is a scam or fake, but also to they can have access to accurate information and about things that are around the Bitcoin. And a partnership with an educational institution is very important. I think that partnership with the universities or any educational organization that they can put cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and the blockchain trainings inside of the existing curriculum they have, especially for the field of computer science, finance, economy, and business. I think that's very important that they have to somehow integrate this curriculum. And a partnership with the industrial experts, also another ways that grassroots activists can get bring them to speak with the people that they are interested in Bitcoin, showcase of the real life example that how either in their communities or the communities around them, they're using cryptocurrencies. I think that it's very important, the curriculum are important that be integrated not only by academia, but also with the lessons and real cases studies by the expert that are using the Bitcoin. And then another thing is that policymakers, that I think that grassroots activists, they needed to be proactive and collaborated with the lawmaker of their country. And they have, obviously, many of the policymakers sometimes, because they don't understand the Bitcoin, they usually disagree with using it that. And it's important that by creating a variance, by writing a policy brief and participating on the public discussion and encouraging the policymakers to look at the beneficial using of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or stable coins. And I think these all could be ways that we can provide the education. Obviously, education in online also could be another ways that you can reach more people.
I said before, and I think in the 2 years I've been in this space, it's my firm belief, using analogies from what I've seen. What brings 1 million or 2 million people to Bitcoin is not us preaching Bitcoin, is us finding things that solve the problems that they have, leveraging Bitcoin. The easiest analogy, and I co-founded the biggest tech hub in Nigeria and Africa 15 years ago, right about the time when mobile apps were starting to become a thing. And if you ask my old mom if she has a mobile app, she will say no. But if you ask her if she has WhatsApp, of course, when she has to call her grandkids, she whips out WhatsApp. Now imagine if someone wanted to get her to use apps and they wanted to educate her on the iOS ecosystem, Android, this is how apps work. Unfortunately, that's the approach that we typically take when we are pitching Bitcoin, which I don't think works. It gets to a stage people's eyes glaze over because we've given them too much information than they need in that moment. What I think we don't have, and I think Michael Saylor mentioned it yesterday, what I think we don't have enough is opportunities for people to earn Bitcoin and to spend Bitcoin through the applications that they use in their everyday life. And the easiest place to look is the creator economy or gig economy. If you're a driver on Uber, why shouldn't you have the option to actually charge in Bitcoin and get paid in Bitcoin? Now, when we think about that, first approach we think of is, oh, I'm going to create the Uber alternative that is powered by Bitcoin. But I think the better way is to actually look at how do we get Uber to actually turn on Bitcoin payment and payout on their application. If we say this is the technology, the value transfer technology for the internet age, how come there are not more internet companies, everyday internet companies, not Bitcoin companies, but internet companies that are integrating Bitcoin? So I think we need to have targeted, specialized education for the drivers of skill. There needs to be people, just the same way Sam Samau is going at governments. We need people going at startup founders. And what I find interesting is in almost all our countries, the Bitcoin ecosystem, the Bitcoin startup ecosystem kind of overlaps with the regular startup ecosystem. We're busy trying to educate single merchants, which is retail, when we can go wholesale by going to a platform that already has scale. We also need to be looking at the people that are building products. So when they are building the next generation of products, they're thinking about Bitcoin as a payment option in there and a payout option. That's the reason why we do the work we do, to reach the people who already have the ability. So we don't teach people how to program. I don't have the time. And there are lots of places that teach people how to program. What I teach people is how to use their programming expertise in Bitcoin. And that's very specific. But you need to get them first to even understand that there is opportunity and possibilities there. I think the other thing that we do too, and since I'm on the stage, I'll take the opportunity. Toxic maximalism is unattractive, and it turns off lots of people who might otherwise be our allies away from what we're doing. There is no reason that we cannot rationally speak to people where they are and get them rationally with empathy to actually understand why this thing is important and get them engaged. I'm from Africa. We were colonized with Christianity and with Islam. We don't need a new religion. Every time we treat Bitcoin as religion, there are people from my continent who are turned off from this. And it's important that as we're working with technology that makes sense. If you read the white paper, it's logical, it makes sense. There's no reason why we can't sell that message from a logical way, rather than in a way that is too combative, too abrasive, that turns people off. Thank you.
When we think about how to scale a project, Area Bitcoin, this is a great doubt we have, how to do it, how we can reach more people, how Area Bitcoin could become like an orange peeling machine to help everyone to understand Bitcoin and bring hyper Bitcoinization faster, right? So for us, the answer is there's two ways we are trying to do it. Area Bitcoin grew a lot since we started, like in 2019, 5 years from now, we have almost 400,000 people that see our content in Brazil. And there's two ways we do it, and I think it's a good way to start. That is to use a familiar language, connect to what people already know. And Bitcoin is so abundant, you can connect to all areas. You can connect to privacy, security, money, even food. You can connect Bitcoin to food, right? You just have to have low time preference, and all areas are connected to Bitcoin. So one strategy is to speak people's language, what is more familiar, the most basic thing. For example, in our contents, we mix with like Big Macs, hamburgers, movies, and we connect it to Bitcoin. So what people already know, so that could be connected to Bitcoin. This is the first door to open. Show something familiar that everybody knows. And the second one is to be the first they see. Because in Brazil, there's a lot of banks and exchanges appearing, all rankings first. If they put Bitcoin in Google, it will appear a lot of things, a lot of banks, but they don't explain Bitcoin. They say people to leave their Bitcoin inside the bank. And it's not, they don't educate to Bitcoin, they educate for banks. So our strategy to arrive first in people's cell phones, in their Google search, is to compete in media strategies, to have SEO strategies, have a huge volume in product video content, all kinds of format, so we can arrive first and help people to find us as well, because sometimes a lot of our students and followers says, how could I never knew you existed. I never knew about Bitcoin only. I never heard about Lightning, but we are always there. All the educators and all the companies are there. So I think we need to arrive first. We need to win the battle in media, with traditional media and fiat companies, banks, and everything else. So this is our strategy right now. How to scale is to arrive first, let people find us.
Yeah, that's a great answer. We're almost out of time. I think one thing that I would really like to hear from you guys, and I can also maybe give my answer, as a final thought, just like, a minute or less. If someone else in the audience, or maybe who's watching on the live stream or looking at the recording later, is interested in starting their own education project, what's one piece of advice that you would give to them? Femi, do you want to start?
I'd say start with people that are in your tribe. And when I say tribe, I mean if you're I think Lynn or someone mentioned yesterday, if you're a doctor, look for medical people and build something that speaks to their language, that connects what this is about to what they're about. And yeah, if you start with what made it attractive for you in the context of the tribe, you will find some things that will make it attractive for people that are like you. And you will have stories from your life and your experience that they can resonate with.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
The question was, if you had to give one piece of advice to someone who wanted to start an education project, what would it be?
Just start. You will not be perfect in the beginning. Most of people think they need to know every technical stuff about Bitcoin. They need to know everything. They need to know how to record videos or write perfect text. You don't need it. You just need to start, and you will learn in the way, and you will improve in the way. If you see our content from the beginning, sometimes I'm ashamed of it, but we learn a lot and we evolved, and everybody's evolving all the time. So my advice would be just start and don't quit.
It's great advice. I think that, yes, I mean, you can start it with your family first to educate them, your friends, and then obviously after that, I mean, in our case, we started with the younger generation, which is a young woman to learn about very basic things, how to work with the Bitcoin and how to use their wallet. So I think that sometimes you don't need to go, as our colleagues mentioned, to go very technical. You can just simply teach about people that how to use cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin to just transfer the money or save the money.
Great. Yeah, I think that's everything. Thanks, you guys, for showing up and for contributing all of your energy and knowledge so that other people, both in your communities and across the globe, can learn. Here's to the next billion Bitcoiners, and hopefully, you know, the army that we're building will go out there and educate more people in turn, and then maybe someone in the audience will start a new Bitcoin education project that will help bring in, you know, contribute to the next billion people that are using Bitcoin in whatever way. So let's have a great round of applause for everyone on the panel, and thanks for coming up, guys.